What is going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a good Wednesday. We're going to talk a little NBA tonight. Really unfortunate what happened with Kawhi, and I'm sorry that he's injured, and I know he's in question for the rest of the playoffs. And they sort of seem to have figured out this series, so it's kind of disappointing for the Clippers. But also coming off of an incredible performance by Kevin Durant and a really pathetic performance down the stretch again by the Bucks, and again not making really obvious coaching moves, like maybe putting someone else on Durant, maybe trapping him, maybe putting a guy like the near defensive player of the year and Giannis on him. I honestly can't believe how poorly that game felt coached, and I haven't always been a guy who tried to defend Bud, but I don't think I can do it anymore. Anyway, crazy game, incredible performance by Durant, and on to tonight. Sheets, any other thoughts before I get into tonight?
He played the whole game, right?
Yep. Pretty impressive stuff.
Considering that Harden was terrible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I really don't understand. I literally don't understand what they were thinking. The defense.
It was bizarre. Like, I thought it was like grade school and like stuff. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't try anything. They kept it the same matchup, and it just made no sense to me.
I mean, like the Nets are basically like using like Harden as like a decoy.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like, to be honest, I think I had more respect for James Harden last night than I ever did before.
Because he stepped up and he did his best. You know what I mean? Like,
he did his thing. He was hurt. He was banged up. He clearly wasn't, and he wasn't forcing anything either. Like, he was trying to just play the game and help. Like, I mean, he really just, it was weird. It was like a weird, good, bad moment. And obviously, if they lost, he would have got a lot of the blame. But actually, Nash would have got a lot of the blame. Anyway, it was a crazy game.
Hey, all of a sudden, Nash is a genius again. Right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, the thing is, it's just, how NBA playoffs go. Every day it changes.
See, now he can say, that's why I sat these guys. I knew I'd have to play KD 48 minutes.
Right, exactly. All right, let's get into tonight, because we are going to have insane, like crazy chalk in the next game. Most of it, I think, is good. There's always a potential that if they think Kawhi can play game 6 and this game gets out of hand, that maybe that some of it isn't, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But let's start with Atlanta and Philly. I think, Bogdanovich, I'll take the guy taking 24 shots. I'm not really as worried about the outcome. And I think Bogdanovich is going to play a bazillion minutes tonight, and I expect him to have enough success to where his price makes sense. I really like him. And I probably, he really had by the way, John Collins deserves like literally all the credit for that comeback. I feel like he had, I don't know how they let him do it, but it was like 4 incredible putback dunks in the last game. I think Philly's going to win this game. And it wouldn't surprise me if they won it handily. The problem is every time they get up handily, Atlanta just keeps coming back. I will say that with as well as John Collins played, still didn't maybe a must-have on a 2-game slate then. I don't know if he would be tonight. So obviously I like Collins and Bogdanovich. They're going to stand out as the obvious plays on the Atlanta side. But on the, I think we need to we need to try out Herter and Gallinari again. I would give the slight edge to Gallinari actually in this one. But I don't mind either way you go. And I will just say again, you've got Capella really cheap, and I don't think he's going to be owned, but it's obviously a tough matchup. So I don't have a ton of unique thoughts on the Atlanta side. I think that I'm going to be mostly playing Bogdanovich and then mixing in Gallinari because I need the savings.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. What was I going to say? Like what do you think of the game in general? You think Philly's going to win?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to dismiss what's his name? Trae Young as a play?
No, I think he's going to be owned like he always is, and I am not going to be one of those people who own him. I mean, he did score 61 fantasy points while shooting 8 for 26. He had 18 assists, which was incredible. I think in Philly, I like Philly tonight. I think they'll do a better job containing him. They did contain him in the last game. He was taking terrible shots. But with that usage, of course, Trae Young is a great play. I personally am trying to build differently than that. I think I prefer Mitchell at a slightly lower price. I guess is basically what I'm saying.
You like any of the ancillary stuff on Philly?
I didn't get to you. So do you want to talk about Atlanta? Any thoughts on Atlanta?
Yeah, no, I just kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I think Bogdanovic 65.
What's that?
I think Bogdanovic is criminally cheap at 6,500.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you have to start. Gallinari, Herter again. I think that on this slate, maybe you should really, you want to play for a blowout in the next game somehow, then you could just play like a whole bunch of guys from this game.
Yeah, I don't know who they are going to be in a blowout who would get a lot of run.
No, I mean that you should play like a bunch of guys from whatchamacallit. I mean you should play a bunch of guys from this game, like the closers from this game. Because the other game is probably, you know what I mean? Because I think that the Utah game rates the blowout maybe a little bit more.
I disagree. But yeah, I think that's going to be a common thought. But like, I don't think that like the Clippers like beat the hell out of them in the last game. You know what I mean? Okay. I don't think my personal take is that I don't know actually though. You're probably right. I believe in Philly here come bouncing back at home. I just think this is going to be a good spot for them. And again, though, even in the blowouts we're talking about, it is a big game. So like even down 25, you're going to see everybody on the court. It really has to get to 30 for you to get guys off the court. We really haven't seen any stars come off the court. Even in the game where they were up 42 in the third quarter, the Nets guys still played like 36 minutes, 38 minutes or something. You know what I mean? There's not a whole lot of time for these other, not scrubs, but whatever you want to call them to get. So on the Atlanta side, I think we sort of talked that through, but the Philly side, it's the question of do you play it? So Embiid versus Trey is an interesting conversation, but as I think about it, I think that I'm just always going to side with Embiid there. I know he's beaten up. I know he had an awful second half the other night, and I know it's a tough matchup, but he's actually dominated it. I do think he's hurt. But I really do. I think Embiid is still more of a priority.
I think Embiid's a significantly more. I don't know. I think Embiid's definitely a bigger priority than Trey. I think that's fair. I mean, I would play Embiid, then I'd play. You had to rank like Tobias and Simmons. Like who would you prioritize between those guys?
Simmons by a lot.
Really? Okay.
And I actually like Simmons. I don't think. Unless we really, the playing Harris is sort of like speculating on Embiid. Like, I mean, at this price, he hasn't gotten there once in the series. Even the first game is not really getting there. At least Simmons, a little bit cheaper. I think he has the upside here to sort of, to be a really good play, actually. And if you can play him with Embiid too, by the way. It's not like you can't spend money, especially if you take the blowout in the other game angle, But Simmons, Korkmaz, obviously, I don't know what happened exactly did I miss something with Korkmaz? Like he still played, like his minutes are lower than he played in the last game, which the projection, okay, whatever. But why is his point projection so much? I don't know. It just feels like a little bit weird. I felt like they didn't price him up enough. And here he is at 3,800. I don't know. I think Korkmaz, and then I'm going to go back to my normal thing and just say that Matisse Thybulle is going to be on the court for enough minutes where I'll consider him. You get the opposite thing on the other end of this game if you want to with Lou Will, who has less minutes but can always get hot and put up 15 fantasy points, which is really all you're asking for if you're going to play these guys in addition to other value. But I think there's better value in the next game. So
yeah, I think that's true. I like Korkmaz at 3,800, but I mean, I think that you're going to get better. I think you'll get better value out of Clipper guys maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. And same thing, Shake Milton, all these guys are in the same situation. There is a chance Philly could shake things up a little bit, but it's not like their starting lineup hadn't dominated them, and then Embiid missed like 8 shots in a row in the second half, and I just don't think that's too likely to happen again. I mean, it's funny because a player prop, like I noticed, like Korkmaz is as a 10.5 point player prop, like for real life points. That's pretty for a guy who has 3.8K. I mean, I just would have thought the projections would be a little bit higher, I guess. That's basically all I can say about that one. But Simmons, Embiid are my priorities. Curry has been terrific in this series. Like, it just feels weird to play him. I guess you could play him in addition with the Clippers guys, but I don't think I'm going to do any of the Curry stuff. I think it's going to be Simmons, Embiid, Korkmaz, and then I'll think about mixing in Thibault some places.
So with all these guys, I mean, so I guess we should really start talking about this other game. This is, again, I wasn't even aware that what's his name was out. But I mean, the plays are kind of obvious, I guess. I just kind of ran another model when to update that stuff, and this is where all the action is going to come from, right? I mean, Paul George is going to be he's going to rate to be a wildly good play. He's going to rate to be wildly popular, I presume. And I guess you can start, right, with playing Paul George and Donovan Mitchell together, right? I mean, that's certainly, you probably play that on a 12-game slate, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's definitely a place to start. But I guess the fun part's going to come from making heads or tails of all this other Clipper stuff, like Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson, Nicholas Batum, Zubac, Terrence Mann, I guess. So what do you Luke Kennard, is he in play? I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, so you're playing Paul George, Morris, and Batum, I think. I don't think
you're
messing around there. I wouldn't bother. I think Reggie Jackson also you're probably playing. Now, the Mann versus Leonard thing is a really tough one because normally I think you would default to Mann to get the minute.
You mean Mann versus Kennard?
That's what I said.
Oh, you said Mann versus Leonard. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Mann versus Kennard.
I got you.
It's a tricky situation because, and also Kennard is going to be more aggressive and has the shooting upside and all that stuff. You're also going to see a lot of Pat Beverly, I think. And at 3K, I mean, it's really, I think you could play two of these guys. If I had to just say right now, usually my answer is always Mann, but Kennard I might take with the scoring upside when they're going to need it against Utah here. Don't be surprised if you see a weird lineup from them or a weird starting lineup from them, including guys who may have not played much in this series. I'm not saying Rondo will start, but don't be surprised if somehow the rotations and the minutes get distributed a little bit differently than they have been. I also think that this does make their small lineup less effective, which opens up Zubac. So I'm kind of interested in all of these guys. I just, right now I'm leaning Kennard and Beverly over Zubac and Mann, but it's really close with all four of them. And this is, I think where you're getting your value. You can play, as many of these guys, you can play five of them together. And I think that's totally fine tonight. I don't know if the minutes will spread out the way that I doubt the minutes will spread out the way the projections are. I understand why they are the way they are, but I think they're going to see a lot more other stuff. And if you're playing 100 lineups, you are playing DeMarcus Cousins in some of those lineups.
As the NFL season wound down, for those of you who remember or were following us during that time, I played literally every slate. I put every showdown slate on both sides towards the end when there were like only 2 games, just, because. And I've started to do that with the NBA, and I'm having success with it. So I'm going to continue to post showdown stuff. And this game is going to be a really fun showdown slate. I mean, because you're going to get Terrence Mann's at 1,500. And Beverly's 3K or whatever it is. So it's actually going to be a fun showdown slate. So I'm going to post stuff for that also. But I guess this is the question I usually ask. So who's going to start in place of Leonard? And
that's not a net question that I have the answer to. We don't.
I was asking kind of like rhetorically. In other words,
okay,
who's going to start? And if that person starts, does that person get that big of a bump over whether he would have played, 24 minutes coming off the bench? Like if they announced that I don't know, Terrence Mann is starting, right? Does that make Luke Kennard like a worse player?
The answer to this is the same thing we just talked about. It's just going to depend on the game flow and who's playing well. It really is.
Right, but we don't know that. So how is it going to affect our decision? You know what I mean? Like if we get into this idea that we like Terrence Mann, and then let's just say they announce that Terrence Mann is coming off the bench, is that going to hurt us at all?
Of course, because but you're giving the other guy the first crack at it.
Okay. No, because sometimes it doesn't. We talked about this. Or sometimes, we play Shake Milton. We didn't care whether you're starting or not.
We never talked about it during the playoffs.
Okay.
It's a totally different game. It's
okay.
But Ty Lue doesn't always seem to get that it's always a totally different game. So I don't know. My lean would be to try to fade the guy who's starting, play the guys off the bench because of the ownership, but that's really just an ownership angle. And I do think they'd want Terrence Mann out there because they can really attack Kennard. So the more I think, maybe it is Mann over Kennard. Maybe you play both of them. I don't think that's a bad idea, by the way. There's totally a path they could both be out on the court because Beverly not only, who knows what's going to happen with Beverly. But I wouldn't probably play both of those guys and Beverly and Jackson. But I would consider playing both of them with Jackson or Beverly. And then obviously the other guys I mentioned.
You think Conley comes back?
No. I mean, I'm just going to operate under that he's not going to be coming back until we hear that he's coming back. I know there's a projection for him every day. Either way, I still like Donovan Mitchell, and I think that maybe, well, if he's back, if we get the word early enough that he's back, Donovan Mitchell will be lower owned than he otherwise would be. I also do think Gobert's price is tempting. It really hasn't been great in very many games in this series, but did have the 148 fantasy point night. And 7,400, we know he definitely has a ceiling to get there. Royce O'Neal stands out as being too cheap, but again, it's hard. You can't really play him over the Clippers guys, and you may not need that value if the Clipper guys are playing. I think Joe Ingles is also very much in play. If there is no Mike Conley, he'd be an excellent play, but we don't know about the Conley thing yet, so it's a little hard to speculate on that one. But if Conley is attacked out again, just go back to the Ingles, Mitchell, and I do think that you can play Gobert. You can do something different, like playing Gobert and Capella at center, and maybe you play Simmons in that line. You know what I mean? To get a little different today, something like that could be really low owned. I think Capella was like 6% owned on the last slate on DraftKings. He was high owned on FanDuel, but not on DraftKings. So that's something I'm considering doing.
I'll tell you who I think the play is of all the guys that we mentioned, and then we'll talk about Utah. I think of all the guys that we mentioned, and you mentioned only for a little bit. I think in a situation like this, like where it's, Kawhi is, he might, like you said, he might be out for the whole playoffs, right? If not, like just at least a series. And it's a 2-2 series, and it's like, they really just need to somehow put their best foot forward or whatever. And I think that Paul George is he's got some mental variance. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's the guy that can really just lead them through this. I think this could end up being this, like, maybe not such a hot take, but this could end up being like some kind of Rondo thing, where they really need him to kind of like keep the team together a little bit. That would be my guess for kind of maybe a guy who maybe not everybody's looking for to pick up minutes and to pick up responsibility. Maybe someone like Rondo. You mentioned him pretty briefly, but I don't know. Maybe you think Rondo's got a performance like that left in him? I don't know. Maybe he's the guy.
He's really faded out of their rotation, but again, they're going to need some offensive lead. You're not wrong in what you're saying. I don't think. Yeah. I do think it's extremely speculative.
Yeah.
And even if he got some of the run, he might be with some of these guys we're talking about for value.
Yeah.
It really is going to be game flow dependent. If they're down 15 right away, I think you might see a Rondo come out there, especially if they're having trouble moving the ball on offense. At the same time, I have a hard time seeing how Rondo and Kennard are going to be able to keep up with all the swing passes and everything with the Jazz the same way that Terrence Mann and Patrick Beverly would. So it is a great thing to speculate on. We could talk a little bit more later today about it because it really is speculation. And then once we get a starting lineup, I can actually speculate how the bench rotations could work and stuff. It would be a lot different if it's Mann starting.
And the other thing you mentioned, who could be the second? Well, Marcus Morris got super hot in the last game, right. But who you could argue is the second best offensive player on the team right now, and you mentioned him pretty briefly, is DeMarcus Cousins.
I wouldn't go. Yeah, I mean that is the if there's a nightmare going on, they're going to bring him in. And actually,
really? Okay.
Well, I mean, he hasn't played the last 2 games and they won both.
Oh, all right.
But if it gets out of hand and they can't score at all, maybe that would happen. I don't think Paul George is fadeable in any way.
Okay.
I can't get behind that at all. But I think he would. I mean, he would have been my favorite play if we had Kawhi playing. He would be my favorite play on the slate.
Yeah, but if Kawhi's out and they're down 20, like I don't know if there's any benefit to running him out there 40 minutes.
So you're just going to forfeit the game? Well,
Yeah.
They know better than we do. If Kawhi is really likely out for the series, then they absolutely will leave him out there for a minute.
No, because what I was going to say, if they were down 20, right? That they're like, okay, let's rest him and let's just try to go out in game 6 at home, you know?
I don't think 20 points is the same thing in the NBA anymore. We just saw 2 teams come back from plus 20 plus down to.
Well, no, I know that. That was my point. Like 20, usually you'd expect the guy to stay in, is what I'm saying.
Right.
But maybe in a situation like that they're on the road, they're probably their win odds would be like less than 1%. You know what I mean? That
exactly.
risking hurting Paul George too would be, well, I don't know what that would be worth it, like for the 1% chance they can come back in this game by leaving him in. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't. It's only if they know that Kawhi is going to be able to play the next.
Right. I'm just coming up with I'm trying to come up with a reason to fade the 90% on guy. You know what I mean? I'm not going crazy.
I get it, man. And some of what you said, I agree with. Maybe there is a path you can find a way to fade Paul George today. Maybe there is. It's hard for me to find it, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I do think that like you can fade Reggie Jackson, even though it's odd because he would be the next guy. I think he's a great play. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But maybe you get the hot game from George and Morris, and they're struggling defensively, and you see more Man and Beverly out there with them, or something like that. Or Reggie Jackson gets in foul trouble again, like he did in Game 1.
Right.
Those are all possibilities. You know, foul trouble that changes everything gets flipped on its head if 2 guys get in foul trouble for the Clippers tonight. If one guy does, it's going to change things. If 2 guys do, it's going to really change the game. Like 3 fouls in the first half, and Patrick Beverly is the kind of guy who will do that. And so is Reggie Jackson. He gets a little handsy sometimes. But yeah, so overall, I mean, it's something we're probably gonna have to wait on until later, but I do think you're playing those 4 Clippers, George, Morris, Batum, and Jackson, and most stuff. Don't mind the little pivots we talked about. I do think for large field stuff that the Rondo thing is a really good speculative play, because we know that if he does get out there and things start going well, he will stay out there. Right. That is the way Ty Lue tends to run things, well, for the most part. And I also think that I go back to this again. I do think that there's think about it, Morris and Batum both play the 4 a lot. So it's possible, or both play the 4 and the 3. So it's possible you could see Zubac in a lot more of the lineup tonight, possibly. He also is a better offensive player than people give him credit for. He hasn't been great for them defensively in this series. Hasn't been able to do much offensively, but maybe that's another route you could look at. But the Clippers' value is where it's at, and then it's going to keep this other value everywhere else very low owned. And I honestly can't even speculate outside of Korkmaz who I could really play over these Clippers guys, because the upside is just too high for the Clippers guys. Yeah. But I do like the Jazz and Philly, nothing special tonight. I think the Clippers will be competitive, maybe a little more so than people think. They looked really, really good. And I know it's a crazy, huge loss for them, obviously, with Kawhi, but we've seen teams rally like this in these situations before. In fact, we almost saw it in Brooklyn a couple games ago.
Yep.
All right. So with that, I think we're going to get out of here. We will be doing a live MLB thing shortly. And good luck to everyone tonight. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards, I hope.